This is Nick Coffer here on Three Counties. Rob will be with you from 3 o'clock this afternoon with all the news affecting you across beds, hearts and bucks. Right, I'm going to do something completely on the fly. Completely on the fly. Okay, this is unrehearsed, unprepared, because this interview only fell into our lap about 2 minutes ago, I think. So I'm going to do a piece of performance art and just wing it with Keren. Founding member of the British girl group Bananarama, Keren Woodward, will be performing at this year's AMP Rocks Festival. Bananarama had a string of UK top 10 hits and topped the American charts as well with Venus. The original lineup of Sarah, Siobhan and Keren will be back together for the first time at a festival since those glorious 80s on the 29th of June. And Keren, are you okay with this strategy that we're just going to wing it? Do you think that's going to be okay?
It's the story of my life. I'm perfectly fine with it.
I was going to say there's kind of a symmetry and a synergy in there. So I'm digging deep into my Bananarama knowledge here, bearing in mind that this has come at the last minute. But I'm delighted to chat to you. And funny enough, I had Girls Aloud lined up to play at 2:30 there, and it's worth noting that Bananarama still to this day have had the largest number of hits for an all-girl band, haven't they?
Well, we have been going rather a long time. I think we're up to about 38 years now.
38 years.
37.
You're not meant to count quite that much.
Sorry.
When you look back to the beginning though, and I think it's often sort of underestimated because we see Bananarama as a very sort of bubblegummy pop band, but the origins were quite almost punky, quite underground. I think John Peel played you early days, didn't he?
Yeah, the very first demo. No, we're far from being bubblegum. I mean, we never were. I think that was from doing things like the cover of Smash Hits and before we learnt to say no to stuff in some ways, and then we went through a sort of very miserable phase where we didn't smile and wore black, which also wasn't us, because I think you can be a lot of fun without being bubblegum, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
but yeah, we came, Sarah and I were asked to leave the YWCA hostel in Great Russell Street in London, mostly for keeping late hours, I think, when we were very young. And we'd met Paul Cook out and about in various places, and he said, well, you can come and live in, there's a room going begging, not luxurious, I have to say, above their rehearsal room, which used to be the office of the Sex Pistols. It was after the Pistols, but Paul and Steve used it to rehearse in. So Sarah and I moved in there, which, was far from glamorous, but it was right in the middle of the West End, and we loved it.
Am I right in saying that this was the bedsit where, as your success grew, so did the quality of the interior furnishings until ultimately you had to move out?
The furnishings we had were remnants left over from the sort of Great Rock and Roll Swindle film. So we had a sort of polystyrene Bambi headboard, and I think the O was our coffee table, and but they had all drawn round the walls. So Sid Vicious and Johnny Rotten and everyone had left lots of graffiti on the walls, and we added to it, and it's still there. It's still there. It's behind a guitar shop now, and it's all still there on the walls.
Wonderful.
Quite a history.
You said there, of course, you and Sarah were close friends from pretty well your toddler years. When did Siobhan come into the picture?
Sarah went to the London College of Fashion to do a journalism course, and Siobhan was on the same course, and they sort of looked and dressed similarly, and we became friends straight away, really.
And of course, at the time, you were all, you loved your clubs, you loved your music, you were very much part of that whole scene, and therein lay the genesis of Bananarama, a band that was formed with a decision to basically just have 3 vocalists. Now, you decided that you were going to be your own instruments. Yeah,
I mean, I was brought up playing piano, but and we used to strum a few chords and play bass and drums and stuff in the rehearsal room, but none of us were really proficient enough, and we wanted to do it there and then. So we used to get up on stage and do BVs with people like Department S, who were Vaughan was a very good friend, and we did Siobhan had some friends at art school called the Tea Set, and they did a gig supporting Iggy Pop, and we got up and sang with them and anyone who'd let us up, really.
Yeah.
And then we started doing our own demos and things at the WAG Club, which was very famous of its time,
of course, yeah.
In the 80s. And so it was Paul Cook's idea from the Pistols to start recording, and he produced our very first demo.
Yeah. And Terry Hall, who thought you all must have been proper singers because he wanted you to come and sing.
Yeah, I mean, when I say, I mean, Sarah and I always sang in the school choir and stuff. Course, it wasn't that we couldn't sing; it's just he thought, you know, we were very professional. We'd only really just started,
yeah,
and we're all rather embarrassed, really. But then Terry was always quite shy as well, so we all got on like a house on fire. Yeah, he liked the way we looked in a magazine article in The Face.
Yeah. And of course, Fun Boy 3 then returned the favour, didn't they, with Really Saying Something?
Yeah, great times, and it was a real good learning process for us because, you know, it was very much do it yourself, and I think I sat at the piano with Terry and played, and then we all had a drum each or maracas or something and just sort of put it together from scratch. And, you know, at that point we hadn't even thought about writing songs, but we started writing songs from then on as well.
Yeah. 1983 is when the high life probably would have started. Cruel Summer, I think, went top 10 in the US.
Yes.
And yet, still you made your own clothes.
Yep.
Using your sewing machines.
Yes.
Still you kind of, you know, had that slightly amateurish dance style that we remember you for. Nothing changed.
Yes, nothing has changed. We've still got amateurish dance routines. We just started making stuff up for our own amusement, really.
Yeah.
And then got a choreographer in from, I think, about 1984, 1985, who happened to be Bruno Tonioli, who has appeared in lots of stuff with us and sort of danced with us on many occasions back in the day, which was very amusing, obviously. And so it just sort of escalated from there.
Were you slightly taking the mickey out of being in the girl band? I mean, was there an element of this that was taking the pee?
Well, I don't know about that. I just think, you know, we weren't maybe typical girls that you'd imagine in a girl band. I mean, our background, as I said, was very different, and I think we thought of ourselves as like any male rock band. It's just obviously because we were singing and we were girls.
Yeah.
It was other people's perception that may have been different. But as far as our own, you know, career is concerned, we've never really thought of ourselves as comparable to the previous girl groups. We loved things like the Supremes, and I love all that stuff, but I think we were very different animals than them, really, because it was so do-it-yourself. You know, sometimes to our detriment, maybe, because we wouldn't listen to anyone.
And slightly clumsy as well. When you once kicked off a TV show for well, a little bit clumsy. Didn't you fall over or something? Didn't you knock a set
yes,
over?
We knocked a set over in a live TV show and got banned to the car park. Yes, we've had many incidents, but really just mischievous and being silly
and having fun as well.
Yes, which we still do, remarkably. Yeah. Otherwise I wouldn't do it, to be honest.
No.
I mean, the shows are as much about us having fun as the crowd, really, and I think it really rubs off. I know if I go and see people, you kind of pick up on the vibe. You can tell if people don't like each other, and you can tell if people aren't enjoying it, and it's just a sort of performance by numbers.
Yeah.
Whereas that's never really how we've been.
The dividing point, the moment when perhaps, excuse me, we can talk about the divorce briefly, would have been around the fourth album, around Wow, because it was Stockache and Waterman, wasn't it? So you'd switch producers. You loved that album, Siobhan less so, and she was getting involved with Dave Stewart. Were the fault lines becoming very clear?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, they were. You know, I mean, I absolutely love that album. I think it's brilliant, and I was very happy making pure pop music, and I just think they were brilliant.
Yeah.
of their time maybe, but really talented, and I really loved working with them. And yes, Peter Waterman used to come in with some tall tales, and he's got a very creative mind, but he wasn't really involved in the making of the music.
Easy to work with, I think it's fair to say. His story suggests that it wasn't easy.
But he's very fond of us. I think Siobhan and him particularly didn't see eye to eye.
Yeah.
But I've got a real soft spot for Peter Waterman, and as much as he said we were difficult to work with, he's very fond of us.
Yeah.
And it was just for the fact that we were the only artists at the time that they worked with who took an interest enough to want to write songs and to have things specifically done for us, as opposed to being part of a conveyor belt of songs, which they became very much mostly after that, after we went to them initially, because they had a couple of tracks on the album before the Wow album, which was Venus. We went to them to do Venus, and we argued that we wanted guitars on it, and they said, well, you can't have guitars on a pop record, and we won out in that case, and we did get guitars on it. But we had an opinion, and if that means you're difficult, then I'm very difficult, and you're not.
And there is a very simple rule that I learnt growing up with my dad managing big indie bands around the time you were out, and that was the artist is always right. The artist is always right. Everything else follows, but always follow the artist's instinct.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're the ones, that I always think that whatever happens and whatever anyone does around us, it always falls back to the artist. So if someone doesn't do what they're supposed to when you're doing a show, or if someone goes wrong, or if I go wrong, that's fine, I go wrong. But if someone else doesn't do their job, they're not going to say, oh, what a shame that the lighting people weren't doing their job properly, that looked terrible. Because it all just thinks, oh, well, that was rubbish. People will look at us. So I think the fact that we've always taken complete responsibility for what we do, whether it's right or wrong, means if the buck stops with us, then so be it. But it's our decision. Yeah.
And it's not, for example, the producer to take the glory. My producer well knows that all of her great ideas have to end up being my great ideas that I just happen to have had around the same time. I mean, that's the way it works around here.
Well, I would say it's more a collaboration and a partnership. It's really important to have producers and writing partners that you get on with and see eye to eye with. We have been in the studio with people we really don't, and it just doesn't work. You have to get on with people, and you have to be on the same wavelength.
I'm just flicking an apology to my producer Katie, who's looking daggers at me for my last comment. Listen, you're obviously back together, and just before we come to Ant Rock, so just take me through that period post divorce, because my recollection of this and my understanding in the early days, the early years, sort of the first 10 years or so, it was a pretty harsh divorce, wasn't it? This was a big fallout.
But you know what? It was. It wasn't the massive fallout that you would think. Siobhan left. She moved to LA with Dave Stewart, and we just didn't see each other.
Yeah.
I don't think of it. She was unhappy. She left, and she wasn't happy for whatever reason, the music, and she was embarking on a new life. Well, it's what people do as they, change and grow. And
the Shakespeare's Sister was a pretty good project.
And then she came back, and then we became friends again. And for the first maybe 7 years, she was off doing her own thing, and then we saw each other on and off in the intervening years, and it wasn't like there was any animosity. It was just that's what happened at the time. I moved to Cornwall in the mid-90s and stopped working for a bit just because I felt like I wanted to have a different life, and those sorts of things happen. It doesn't mean to say that you hate the other person. Sarah's been my best friend all the way through that, but people do different things in their lives, and I felt it was very much she went off and did a different thing for a bit.
And of course, in many ways, you are reflective of your fan base, because my little pet theory, and I was talking to Tom Bailey yesterday from the Thompson Twins, and I'll play that interview later on my show in a couple of weeks' time. And I threw this theory at him, and he agreed with me that actually one of the reasons the 80s have got such a renaissance is that your fan base, they all loved you in the 80s. They then went off and had families and children. Now those children have flown the nest, and therefore everyone's trying to relive and take themselves back to where they were when they were 17 or 18. And actually, that kind of reflects your story as a band as well.
Yeah, I mean, there was a point in the 90s where I think it went so indie, it kind of went a bit anti-pop, which, sort of suited me because I wanted to do some different stuff, which I did. But for the last, God, feels like forever, 15 more years, Sarah and I have been, recording, doing festivals, doing lots of shows, and we started sort of doing 80s shows with really we toured after Siobhan left, so we toured in 89, and then we didn't do a huge amount of live work, and that's kind of what Sarah and I have done for as long as I can remember again now, and it's brilliant. And we do other shows apart from the 80s shows, but I absolutely love doing the 80s shows. There's a great vibe, that the crowd come along. I mean, everyone gets up and does all their hits. I mean, it's just such a great time. I mean, the bands in the 80s were very diverse, and yet, everyone was a bit different. And I think, individuality really shone through. Everyone had their own sound, their own look, and then when you bring it all together, it's just a whole bunch of acts with great songs.
Absolutely, and acts who were pushing the boundaries, using new instruments, using new techniques, using new studio techniques.
Yeah, absolutely. We laugh at the size of the fair lights when they came in or whatever. It was like a church organ coming in just to play a couple of different sounds. It's insane how things have changed.
Well, the reality is this smartphone in my hand now could create the same diversity of music that you would have required huge rigs for and several rooms of studios.
Those great big track tapes and everything.
Yes. So Amp Rocks, Friday the 29th of June. It starts at 5 o'clock. It's you, Bananarama, Reef as well, An Example. Tickets currently are £35.
A nice diverse lineup, isn't it?
It's very diverse.
Something for everyone.
There's some pop, there's some festival rock, and there's how would we describe Example? Good contemporary pop as well. Contemporary music. You know what I'm trying to say. I'm getting myself in a twist, so I'll just give the address. It's going to be at Ampthill Park, which is of course in Ampthill. Now, if you want to buy tickets, as I say, they are currently £35. My understanding is they go up to 40 quite soon. Tickets can be bought at amprocks.eventbrite.com. That's amprocks.eventbrite.com, or you can head off to the Amp Rocks Festival page, which is unsurprisingly Amp Rocks on Facebook. More about Bananarama is where, Karen?
Sorry?
More. Okay. Do you have a website?
Yes, bananarama.co.uk.
Have you entered the world of Twitter as well, or not?
Occasionally Instagram. I'm really bad at it.
Okay.
We have official stuff. Yes, we have official sites, but me personally, I'm pretty rubbish. Okay. But you're more than welcome to check me out.
Bananarama.co.uk for the website, and amprocks.eventbrite.com if you want to go and see Keren with Siobhan and Sarah headlining ahead of Reef, An Example as well. And there's a local band called the Kazoos playing as well, if I'm not mistaken. It's been great to chat to you. It was completely improvised.
And you.
Last minute.
And it was good. It was interesting for that, though.
I think it's sometimes nice to just, have an afternoon chat. I'll let you go back to your birds because I can hear them tweeting in the background. And I'm sure that many of my listeners...
That's country living for you.
See, they'll enjoy seeing you at the end of June in the heart of Ampthill Park.
Yes, it'll be fun.
Good stuff. There's Keren Woodward, 1/3 of Bananarama, of course, coming to Amp Rocks at the end of the month, and very, very nice was too. Lots of stories, a great era as well, and I do love the fact that there's this wonderful revival happening. You're listening to Nick Coffer on Three Counties.